Hello and welcome to the war on parenting waged by the states. And seeing that my case is with Connecticut, I'm doing this basically for Governor Ned Lamont. And Ned Lamont's got three kids. He grew up, he was there while they were growing up. He has no idea what it's like to be a parent that had your kids taken for no reason whatsoever except to make your mother rich, or at least rich enough to move out of the project she was living in. So, this is, and Mr. Lamont, you ought to get a hold of your Attorney General and get the Assistant Attorney Generals to be on board with looking at the documentation that shows that the state of Connecticut violated the rule of law to keep me paying child support even though my kids are almost 50 years old. All right? So let's go to the paperwork, the war on parenting here. And this is done, I just redone this page, and it's done in a timeline manner. And the reason why my mother took my children is because my first wife had encephalitis meningitis and was in a coma. And she told me she would help me with babysitting because I was working a job that was 90 to 110 hours a week. I was a truck driver, which I had to quit and take a local job, But I did pay my mother, but when she heard the doctors telling me, I was 23 years old, the same age as Casey Hutchinson, and everybody's awarding her, oh, she's only 23. Well, think of a parent, 23 years old, two young children, and his wife goes into a coma. He was in a coma for several months with encephalitis meningitis. And the doctors are telling you, oh, you got to get a medical divorce. She won't be able to take care of you or your children at the age of 23. Okay? So that's when my mother took my kids, went down to welfare, signed them up to welfare because she was living in one of the worst projects in the state of Connecticut. So that's how my kids were taken. They weren't taken by the state. However, in 1986, and you can go through this, I ended up getting custody of a child I had out of wedlock. And I got custody because the children were abandoned in the house. They were abandoned in the house in February '92, but in December of '91 they were also abandoned. I came in off the road being a truck driver and went to see my kids, and my son Stephen was toddling around with a tray of cocaine. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. Their mother never got. I found my daughter Tiffany up in her bedroom. Their mother didn't get home until after 8 p.m. that night. So instead of the cops listening to me, they arrested me and everything got dropped. But they set up so my kids could be neglected again. And this is the newspaper clippings of where my ex Cynthia, not my ex-wife Linda, but my ex Cynthia, took in and abandoned the children. And the order of commitment is where the state gave me custody of my daughter Tiffany. In 1986, Superior Court records, I was awarded custody. She was living with me since late 84, early 1986, 5. Okay, let's go back. I also tried to keep in touch with my older two children that my mother refused to let me see until she bought the house that she moved in 36 Jefferson Avenue, and she needed work done in the backyard because she didn't trust her other sons with chainsaws and things. So I took advantage of it, and I got a hold of the school that they were at and set up appointments and things, and that went south pretty quick after my mother got the work done, and she gave up on it. In 1987, Cynthia ended up dying of a drug overdose, acute intravenous. Not okay. So that's where. So, and Stephen, when the kids were found, I got custody of Tiffany, but my son Stephen was placed with his grandparents because Cynthia abandoned Stephen at her parents' house, and of course they didn't like me very much anyway. So, but the state of Connecticut deemed that because he was with them, and he was with them since '82 when the state of Connecticut refused to let myself or my daughter have visitation rights to Stephen. He was adopted by the grandparents, and I'll have Stephen on the show. I talk to him 2 to 3 times a week, mostly 2 times a week. I just spoke to him this morning, in fact, and he's looking forward to do the show because the state of Connecticut is giving him a hard time over his children, who he hasn't seen for almost five years, because he went in for an amputation and his significant other picked up his 2 sons and took off. So we'll be doing a show on that too. But in 1988, my mother let me have the kids, my two oldest kids, for the summer, and I decided that, oh wait a minute, missed a part here. So let's back up to 1986. After I got custody of Tiffany, I got my divorce. And in the divorce, it says that the minor children, Charles and Rebecca, pending a custody study, should be with me. And I was to pay $1 a year for child support until the custody study was done. And that's right in the divorce papers. And the reason for that was because I filed paperwork with the court. I had a letter from the Child and Youth Services who did the investigation, Janice Quinlan, for Tiffany, who wrote the letter saying I should have it. And Jan Steers was my counselor, and she wrote her letter in my behalf. So that's the reason why the judge decided that I should have the children. But the state of Connecticut, in its great wisdom, great corruption and fraud, decided, nah, we're not going to do that. So if we go down here, in 1988, I decided, well, my mother gave me the kids for the summer. The state of Connecticut refuses to call me back or anything. And I was living in upstate New York. We moved up there in 86, right after I got Tiffany, because Cynthia kept coming and trying to steal Tiffany from our house. So my mother filed paperwork, and in her paperwork, all these these here are all clickable, and it's got the paperwork on there. It shows that I was supposed to have the children, that I was the one that the court gave the children to pending the custody study that the state of Connecticut refused to do. And the other part of it is when they refused to do the custody study, they, June 9th, 1 month after I went to court and the judge said I was to get just to pay $1 a year, the state of Connecticut went back to court to raise the child support. So therefore, they were not going to do, they had no inkling on doing the custody study. That's where the rule of law is violated. Okay? So you can open all these. And when I did go to court in 88, I had, because my mother used to call Child and Youth Services on my second wife and I at least twice a month to make it look like we were incompetent parents. She knew how to play the game, boy, I'll tell you. But the CPS worker, Penelope Fromer, typed this letter up. And the reason why I knew my mother called is because there's drugs involved. There was always drugs involved when she called child abuse on my wife and I. So, but the meat of this, it comes down, the state overcharged me when Stephen was adopted in 87, or was it 88? It was 88, November 7th of 88. We didn't have no visitation or anything. I hired an attorney and found out that I was being charged child support for Stephen till 1991, and possibly beyond that, because it was supposed to stop on November 7th, 88. But great state of Connecticut, they're looking for a handout anywhere they can get. So they kept charging me child support, even though I haven't seen the kids since 1982. So that's violations all over the place. And like I said, these are all clickable. I ended up going to fair hearings. I never missed anything with the courts. I started working with Congresswoman Gillibrand in New York, and then she became senator, and I started working with the next congressman, who wrote a letter for me. But they told me I had to go through and get a hold of Connecticut Child Enforcement. And I did, and I talked to John Dillon for over a year, and he wrote a letter saying the state of Connecticut was within its rights, bringing me up on all these child support things. And here's the letter from the first letter, and I had a court date with Heidi Winslow, and he wrote this to the judge saying that no custody study was ever done. Well, the great state of Connecticut, they just don't respond to congressmen. So nothing was ever done. And Heidi Winslow, and I have to ask this because Heidi Winslow answer was, there is no prospect that any court would dismiss, open, or modify a divorce judgment from 1986 for a reason, you can read it, and It, so she canceled the hearing instead of doing the hearing. This is where she wrote it. Okay, so my question is, if nobody she wouldn't hear the case in 2010, why would she hear the case November 4th, 2022? I know that's getting ahead of myself a little bit. It's a little bit out of sync with, but it gives you something to think about. Okay? And here's another thing to think about. You know, in 2013 through 14, Ann Stevenson, who was a journalist and a lawyer, wrote many articles on the corruption in which the state dealt with family courts. And these are some of her things, and she actually testified. Here, we'll bring it right up. It takes a little time. This is right off the State of Connecticut server. And that's why it's taking a little time here. But she testified to the Connecticut legislature on what she found. This is taking forever. Let me close that. And we'll see if it opens faster from my page. There we go. I took a copy off the internet and put it on my page, so when the state takes it down, you can still get to it. But she testified in a public hearing on January 9th, 2014. And here's her testimony. So, Connecticut's been fraudulent as far back as I can remember. I mean, I've been dealing with them for over 46 years now. And here are some of the articles, and I printed out 5 of them. And this is one of the 5 I printed out, and this was from the Hartford Courant, February 4th, 2015. And I'm glad I took it down because you can't get to it no more. And it shows that the corruption and fraud in Connecticut. Okay? So, Judge Heidi Winslow, when I went in November 4th of 2022, told me that you can't believe everything you read. Now look at all these articles. This ain't even all of them. Okay? My next thing was I wrote a letter to Chris Gibson, my congressman, and I told him I needed help because of the corruption in Connecticut. And he wrote a letter to the person that was supposed to do the honor, and they sent this back to him. And like I say, all these are clickable, so you can go there. But there's 2 congressmen that wrote, and nothing's been done. And I'm still paying child support, even though my child support was paid in 1994 when my last child was emancipated. So, and some of these here, oh yeah. So you can go through these, and these are the court hearings from 2015. Which they were total assholes, wouldn't look at my paperwork. They told me theirs was stolen. You know, we lost all our paperwork. This case is too old. We're not going to look at the paperwork that shows that the state of Connecticut sent it to you. We're just going to make you pay whatever we decide you need to pay. And Ned Lamont, this is when you were sworn in the first time, January 9, 2019. He began. So on May 2nd, and this is where I asked Michael Volpe if he manipulated any of his article that he wrote. But Mimi Gomez was on the Judicial Accountability um, in Connecticut, and she was pulled just 4 months after Ned Lamont took office. So I'm wondering if Ned Lamont, I mean, he got to raise his kids, is just looking for a handout from parents. And the Attorney General is standing right there with him because Assistant Attorney General Carol Miwan, when I told her that my kids were running with the Latin Kings, her response was, well, you still got to pay the money. Actually, she didn't say nothing, but her demeanor and things. And so, this is just total crap. You can go through everything here. I've written to just about everybody. When I got the transcript from the November 4th, 2022 court hearing, it was nothing like when I was in court. And I wrote the transcriptionist, and it's here. You can read them. But underneath all this is even how much more the state of Connecticut is fraudulent and corrupt when it comes to stealing children and basically trafficking them to either family members that don't really want the kids, all they want is the money, or to people that don't want the kids and abuse the children. So this is I put all this in here, and then down here I've written whistleblowers complaints that went nowhere. I wrote to the American Civil Liberties, received the package back. Yes, it was COVID, but evidently ACLU closed down during COVID. I've written to the U.S. Attorney General's office several times, never got a reply. I worked with Congressman Delgado's office for 2 years, and they told me that they sent it to the Attorney General's office and told them that it was a corrupt case and this, that, and the other thing, but refused to give me the name of the person in the U.S. Attorney General's office or any information at all. So this is a 45-year case. And but Governor Lamont, you are not going to get reelected next time. You are a child trafficker. If you can't get your house in order, every time when I was in school, they told us that the governor is the head of the state. And if something's wrong in the state, it lays at the governor's feet. Well, governor, get off your ass and straighten out the family courts, because they are so fraudulent and corrupt that other states are taking your playbook, and no parent in the United States is safe from the corruption within the state governments and the federal governments, and we'll go into that in a later date. But I feel that people ought to know that their children are not safe when DCS comes knocking at your door. My children were taken by my mother, and because I had no insurance, I had to pay a lengthy hospital bill because my first wife was in a coma for months in the hospital, and all that came on me. So I couldn't afford a lawyer And in Connecticut, they don't do pro bono work. Not in family court. Back then it was $300 to $600 just to get in the office. And that's per hour. Now, forget it. And the parents that are having their children taken are among the poorest in the state. And I think that's why the state of Connecticut came after me, and I'm coming after you. Because nothing left. I've got 2 kids, my 2 oldest kids won't even talk to me. Stephen tells me about all the abuse that he suffered at his grandparents' hands. And the state of Connecticut don't care. All they want is the money. And they're taking money out of my Social Security and leaving it so I don't have enough money for my medication for my diabetes, my heart problems, and my thyroid issues. Because I no longer have a thyroid. It was removed with 4 different kinds of cancer. So, come on, Ned Lamont. Get your ass in gear. Get your attorney general to get rid of all these slackers that refuse to look at the documentation that shows that the only reason why my kids stayed in the state was the state refused to do the custody order that was ordered by a Supreme Court judge in the state of Connecticut. Now they go back and they raise the child support up and say, oh, we don't have to do this. Screw this guy. He ain't got no money. Well, this guy's coming back to haunt you, Ned Lamont. I hope you have a good day. And the rest of you, remember what I said. Your children are not safe if child and youth services comes to your door. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.